nice to meet everyone virtually. I'll give a little introduction about myself. So my name is Rasitha Herath. I've been in the field of digital marketing since the mid 2000s, both in the client side as well as the agency side. Been in roles in web management, digital campaign planning, analytics, social, email, retargeting, all that. But I think my sweet spot, my real strength is in putting this all together and combining and creating high impact digital experiences. So that's going to be the core of the presentation today. So I think we live in the most fascinating times in human history. It's unbelievable, right? And one of the reasons, one of the things that fascinates me the most about the times that we live in is how much of an impact digital experiences have on our lives and how quickly things are evolving in the field of digital. It truly is a digital first world. Think about it. Think of how a JCPenney physical store has evolved in the last 20 years or so. If you went to a JCPenney store in the early 2000s and compare that with the JCPenney store experience today, you'll find probably the same pricing strategy, same product categories, same aisle structure. You'll probably find that nothing much has changed. Now, compare that with how much the JCPenney online business has changed over the last 20 years. And you'll see a paradigm shift. So today, what I want to talk about is how digital experiences are evolving. I want to talk about the kind of digital experiences you need to build to delight your customers online. I want to talk about things like trust and personalization and why those things are critical and foundational to how we set our online experiences. And I also want to talk about how you should be structuring your teams to be successful in this digital first world. So I have identified 5 overarching characteristics of companies that are set to thrive in a digital first world. So I want to share those with you. How does that sound? Does that sound like a good plan?
Yes, please.
All right. So characteristic number 1 of companies that I think will excel in this digital first world, and that is these are companies that are going to thrive in a omni-channel multi-device world. I want to talk a little bit more about channels. So what I mean by channel in a marketing context, specifically in a digital marketing context, is how people find your business. So Google is a channel. People will do Google searches and come to your website. Email marketing is a channel. People will see an email newsletter that you have sent, click on a link and come to your website or call you. Facebook is a channel. People will see your Facebook page, Facebook ads, and they will reach back to you. And that's all great. You need a mix of marketing channels working for you. But you have to understand that all marketing channels are not created equal. So you need to really think strategically about the mindset of the user when you are driving the user back to your digital experience. So a good way to visualize this, I think, is by 2x2 metrics. So if you look at this illustration here, on the x-axis, I have interruption. So going from high interruption to low interruption. And on the y-axis, I have paid and free. So let's focus on marketing channels that are high interruption in nature. So let's take social media ads, for example. Think of the mindset of someone before they click on a Facebook ad. So these are people who are on Facebook, probably trying to reconnect with old high school buddies, or let's face it, looking at cat videos or reading funny memes on the internet. And if you ask them to come to a landing page that you created and buy something directly, or to read a 23-page white paper, that's not the experience that they want. It's too distant. So if so the landing page experience that you create need to tie in with the mindset of the user. So the landing page has to be live, fun, engaging. Let's take another example, email. So if you look at data for email consumption, personal email consumption, what you'll find is that a majority of customers or users will check their personal emails on their mobile phones. If you have a big customer base living in a city, what you'll find is that a lot of these users would be checking email on their mobile phones while stuck in traffic or traveling in the metro. So think about that. Think of the amount of real estate that you have to grab the attention of these users. So if you think of how emails are loaded on a mobile screen, what the user is going to see is the subject line, which is going to be truncated to around 30 characters to fit the small screen. The sender's name, which is going to be in bold at the top, and what you call the pre-header text, which is going to be a sentence and a half. So that's the real estate you have to create that first experience for your users. I think email is a good example of a marketing channel that is underutilized. And there's a lot of simple things you can do to perfect the digital experience you are creating for your users. One example is subject line testing. A lot of marketers don't invest in proper subject line testing. One takeaway that I want to share with you is definitely invest some time in thinking through subject lines, creating some A/B tests. It's very easy. A lot of the email marketing software that you already have will allow doing this for free. And look at data and try to understand what your customers are really resonating with, and build that into the digital experiences you are creating. So understanding the user's mindset and baking that into the digital experience, that's going to be critical in this digital age. So let's go back to that 2x2 metrics. I will talk about SEO traffic. So SEO traffic is important because it's low interruption traffic. So if you think of how someone is finding your website on the search engine, what happens is this is a user typing in keywords and coming to your website or some content you have on the internet. So it's zero interruption. You are not pushing anything towards the user. They are finding you. In marketing terms, this is what you call permission-based inbound traffic. And it's scalable. 9 out of 10 information searches start on Google. There's 5.6 billion searches that happen on Google every day. I'm not going to go too deep into the algorithms behind SEO or the technical aspects of SEO. That's probably going to be a conversation that's going to take a few months. But if you ask me the one thing that you should invest in for next year in terms of SEO, I'm going to say that's content strategy. Build a robust content strategy. Really think of questions that your audience would have and try to build content that will answer those questions. So for example, if you are running a daycare or a preschool, try to think of questions that parents would have and try to build content to answer those questions. Let's say you are in the wine business. Think of questions that wine enthusiasts would have and build content to answer those questions. And if you do a good job at this, what you'll find is your website becomes more discoverable. And what you need is that magical attraction between your website and search engines, right? That's the start of a good digital experience. All right, so moving on. Characteristic number 2 of companies that are going to thrive in a digital first world. These are going to be organizations that master the art of simplicity. When I think of simplicity, I always go back to this landing page that Twitter had back around 2012. This was the time when Twitter was the upstart in the social media market. Facebook was the more established player, and Twitter was trying to get market share. And this was the landing page experience they had. People who came to this landing page could only do two things. One was they could sign in to Twitter using their existing credentials, or if they did not have an account, they could sign up to Twitter. That's it. So when I talk about simplicity, I think we need to create digital experiences that are as clear and simple as this Twitter landing page. If you are creating a new landing page or a digital experience or a website or even a newsletter, really think of the top 5 things you want to achieve, want your customers to do, and then narrow it down, reduce it to the top 2. Because it's that kind of clarity, that kind of simplicity that's going to set you up for success in this digital age. Pinterest is another good example. So Pinterest uses this concept called the infinite scroll. Users who come to this website don't have to click through and wait till secondary pages load. They scroll down infinitely and they say things that they like. They pin objects, they like things, and it's a very simple user design. While we are talking on simplicity, I also want to talk about information architecture, because I think information architecture is critical. Without a simple information architecture, you cannot achieve simplicity. Information architecture is a fancy way of describing how information is organized. A lot of people think of information architecture as this tech concept, but in reality, it's not a tech concept. Information architecture is everywhere. If you go to restaurant menus are an example of information architecture. Road signs are an example of information architecture. If you go to an airport and you find it confusing, it's probably because the information architecture is flawed. So let's take this restaurant example. Let's say you have your favorite Chinese restaurant, and you go there, you always order the orange chicken dish, and that's under chef specials. Now, one day you find that they have moved the orange chicken from chef specials to chicken. That's going to confuse you. That's going to even annoy you. You're going to have that natural question. Why did they make this change? Did the chef lose confidence in preparing this dish, or was it ever a special, right? So when you make changes to information architecture, it tends to confuse customers. It tends to derail you from simplicity. So my suggestion is, if you're building a digital experience, really brainstorm, think about the kind of information architecture you want. And once you settle on it, don't move things around too much. All right, so adaptation number 3 of organizations that are going to do well in the digital first age, and that's trust. I think trust is going to be foundational to a lot of customer experiences that we create as marketers. We live in the age of cynicism. A lot of the younger audiences, especially the more technically savvy ones, don't believe in what brands say. They don't believe in what marketers communicate. And they would mercilessly sever relationships if they feel like they are being mistreated. And some of the cynicism I think we deserve as marketers. If you look at ads run by brands like TurboTax, they use the word free all over the internet during tax season. I even saw a video ad that they ran where the spokesperson was using the word free 20 times within a period of like 1 minute. Now, the reality is when you try to file taxes with TurboTax, only a handful of people will actually be able to file for free. Sneaky, right? It really is a sneaky tactic to get people to fill out paperwork on TurboTax and hoping that they will end up filing even if they see there is a cost at the end. Is this illegal? Probably not. I'm sure they have vetted this tactic with hundreds of their highly paid lawyers. I'm sure they have done a fine print retreat and really thought through the fine print language. But it certainly is a deceptive tactic, and customers are not going to like it. So trust is getting more and more scarce. And I think brands that are going to create trustworthy customer experiences online are going to be able to survive in the long run. Also, make it easy for customers to end relationships with you. So if customers want to cancel, downgrade, unsubscribe, make it painless. If you had a customer who signed up for your service online, don't ask them to go call someone to cancel the service. That's not the right thing to do. If you're creating customer experiences online next year, I want you to take make this contract with your audience and with yourself. Make a promise to yourself and to your audience that you are going to be providing the experience, the whole experience, and this is important, nothing but the experience. And my last point on trust, stand for something. Data shows that brands that stand for something will be perceived as more trustworthy. And this could be anything. It could be gender equality, could be clean water, could be saving the rhinos. Great cause if you're into saving the rhinos, more power to you and the rhinos. But you have to pick something that you truly believe in. You have to pick something that is close to your heart, and you have to pick something that is authentic. And if you do that, you become more believable, and more customers, more users are going to stand with you. All right, moving on. Personalization. Personalization is going to be critical if you want to differentiate yourself online as a brand. So let's talk about personalization. Personalization is the process of treating each customer differently, gently suggesting suitable products, content, and offers based on collected data. The key phrase here is gently. If you try to do personalization too aggressively, you're going to come across as needy, pushy, even creepy. These are all, I'm hoping, are technical terms. So who does a good job with personalization? Brands that come to mind, Amazon. They have a lot of data and they are able to customize the website based on our preferences. Netflix is another example. They'll know what content we consumed, and they are able to shape their digital experience based on our preferences. Now, if you're a small business who have not thought about personalization yet, if this is the first time you're thinking of personalization, you don't have to be disheartened. I think there's a still a lot of room for you to get that foundation right. For example, if you have a website, um, think of having a my account or my profile function. So you can get your users to create an account with you, create a profile with you, and then you can start collecting personal information about their preferences. And that's a great starting point. Another simple thing you can do is have a chat with us function. So what you can do with the chat function is you can not only answer one-on-one questions, you can provide personalized consultations, but you can also then collect that data, feed it into a back-end customer relationship management tool, and then you can shape the way you have future interactions with your customers because you have more data on them, because you know them more intimately. So Roasters Coffee, I'm a big fan of Roasters Coffee. I dig their coffee. And one of the things I like about Roasters, by the way, great local company. One of the things I really like about Roasters is the fact that they provide a personalized service. When I go through the drive-through, I usually go to the coffee shop on Columbia, and they would recognize me. They would know the kind of coffee I order. They know the temperature I like my coffee. If they see my kids in the back of the car, they'll check with me whether I'm buying something for my kids. It's a personalized experience, and that makes me happy. So, um, so companies that are investing in personalization will be recommended more, by customers. It'll have a better um, experience overall with customers, and that's going to be a game changer for a lot of brands in the next few years. Reed Hastings, CEO of Netflix, has this expression: "We avoid psychographics." Psychographics is kind of a sophisticated word, but and it's kind of a loaded word, but the simple meaning of psychographics is personas. So, and personas have been a big part of marketing, important part of the marketing toolkit for a long period of time. But personas are going away from marketing. And personas are being replaced by profiles, customer profiles. Personas are fictionalized individuals who act as representation of your customers. Profiles, on the other hand, are rooted in data. And the advantage is, in this digital era that we live, there is a lot of data. There's a digital footprint in everything your customers, your users are doing on your website. So you can use that data to build profiles that are closer to the hopes and aspirations of your users. All right. Moving on to the next section, I think companies that are set up for success, organizations, brands that are set up for success in the digital first era, are going to rely a lot on building teams around diversity. And I think there's a story that I think is a profound example on the importance of diversity from the tech world. So when YouTube first launched its video app, the mobile video app, and this was around 2012, the goal of this app was people could use their mobile phones, shoot videos, and then upload directly to YouTube. Pretty cool, right? What YouTube found was that about 10% of the videos that were uploaded within the first month were curiously uploaded upside down. And they could not figure out why. Turns out all the videos that were uploaded upside down were uploaded by left-handed people. From the world population, there's about 10% left-handed people, and The left-handed people were using the phones, they were holding the phones in the opposite direction. Now, you would think business as smart and as organized as YouTube would catch this kind of flow early. What has happened was the YouTube product team has not had a single left-handed person in that team. So that whole development process, they simply lack that perspective. So the data on the importance of diversity is overwhelming. Diverse teams will always beat less diverse teams in the long run. Diverse teams will always be more creative than less diverse teams. And I think sometimes when it comes to hiring, what happens is we all tend to hire people just like us. Why? Because we are awesome. And in extension, we want to hire people who are also awesome. Makes sense. But reality is you need a mix of personalities, especially in a function like marketing, especially when you're creating customer experiences. You need people with different backgrounds. You need people with different life experiences. You need people with different work styles, communication styles, all that. Because end of the day, your audience, your market will always be a lot more diverse than your team. So it's the more you can think in terms of different perspectives and build that into your customer experience, that's going to set you up for success once you launch products. All right, this is my last slide. Talking about personalities and the importance of mix of personalities, I'm also a big fan of having people in the team who ask difficult questions. And the analogy I go back to is this from this movie 8 Mile. I think a lot of people have watched this movie. It's about Eminem, the rapper, growing up in the 1990s in Detroit and taking part in these rap battles. So there's a guy called Cheddar in this movie, and Cheddar is Eminem's buddy. Just before Eminem goes on stage in the finale, the last rap battle, Cheddar raises this slightly uncomfortable but important question, which is, what if they bring up the fact that your girlfriend cheated on you? Now, to Eminem's credit, he takes this question to heart. He's able to think on his feet. He's not rattled. And he addresses this in his in the rap battle before his opponent can bring it up. I think the reason that Eminem was able to win was because Cheddar asked the difficult question before the opponent, the competition, or the market. So mix of personalities, right? Sure, you're going to need your cheerleaders. They're the ones who will make you feel good. You need your collaborators, you need your coaches, but you also need the cheddars because they're the ones who are going to ask those difficult questions, and answering them before the market does is going to be important when you're creating digital experiences. So with that,
Morgan, who you met when this began, wants to know if you recommend personalizing the subject line with the recipient's name when sending out these mass emails.
That's an interesting question. So the data suggests that when you do personalize subject lines with the name, they tend to get a higher open rate. I think that tactic is probably going to be a little short-lived. I think a lot of customers now understand that it's a machine doing this, so it's not like someone is calling you by your name just because they are a nice human being. So I don't think it's a tactic that's going to yield the same results in the long run, but testing it out, seeing whether it's it's a concept that's going to work with your particular audience, I think it's a great idea.
Okay, this is great because I'm asking Jessica's questions and she's nodding her head. You want to jump in, Jessica?
Well, I had a follow-up to that one too.
Please.
So the preview text. Sometimes I fall into the trap of just copying some of the body of the email and putting that into the preview text. What do you recommend? Do you recommend that being unique, or is it appropriate just to copy a couple of the main points from the copy of the email?
No, I mean, I'm guilty of that too. I mean, when sometimes, you want to get something out quickly and you just let some language from the email just be the pre-header text, right? I think we should treat that area as advertising copy.
Okay.
Like really think about like what gets the attention, because if you look at the data, a lot of people check personal email on mobile devices, and that real estate, that little piece of real estate, is what makes the difference. So I think it's worth investing time and money in perfecting that.
Wonderful. Thanks. Thanks,
So,
Mike.
Jessica, you also mentioned that somewhere in college you learned that you should tell the truth. Would you like to challenge Rasitha on truth in advertising?
No, it's not a challenge. It's I've been struggling with this. It's hammered into you when you get your degree that there's truth in advertising. There's all of these rules that you have to comply with, but I don't see that being enforced online. How many times do we get sucked into a video only to get to the end of it and they're like, oh, this is just actors, this is not the real thing. And you wonder how many of these reviews are actually truly customers, or how many of them are just bots that have gone in. So I don't know, I guess I'm just looking for your perspective on that, and maybe how you apply that to either your work at PNNL or previous positions.
I think just like with a lot of other things, I think the legal side of things, that's one aspect, but I think I think where the corrections will come will be because of pressure from more technically savvy audiences. I think a lot of the younger, more technically savvy audiences do not want to be manipulated or deceived online. So I think companies that try to use some of these clickbait tactics, I don't think it's going to work in the long run. And it might work with certain audiences in certain limited generations maybe, but I don't think those tactics will survive. So I think marketers, and a lot of marketers online are performance driven. So when they see that those tactics are not working, they will have to go back to more transparent advertising and marketing. So and I know there's a legal side of all this. A lot of these brands that try to get people to click through and go forward and do all these things are probably covering behind the fine print. So that's there, but I think the real enforcement is going to come from us, right? From the audience.
Thank you.
Rasitha, there's a side conversation going on, a short one in the chat box. There was a question, does anyone here use a CRM tool? And Miles Thomas came back and he recommended HubSpot with some good words on that. Do you have any recommendations on CRM?
HubSpot is terrific, especially for a small or medium-sized business. HubSpot has a lot of cool features to it. You can combine the analytics, the email marketing, the lead gen side of things, and you have that one platform. If you're more of an enterprise level organization, you can go with something a little bit more advanced, like Salesforce. So that Salesforce is considered the more enterprise level customer relationship management tool out there. It's probably going to be a little bit more pricey, a little bit more time consuming to set up. But if you want to scale, and if you have a larger, more complicated business, that's a good route.
Thank you. And thank you, Miles, for the question. By the way, y'all may have seen If you all want to come off video and unhit mute and ask your own questions, feel free to do so. In the meantime, I'll keep tracking the chat box. And Jessica, I'm going to go back to you because you're highly, highly engaged. You had a question about marketers building messages. Why don't you present that to Rasitha?
Well, it touches on a conversation Andrea and I had a couple months ago regarding messaging. You talk about actual data profiles of users instead of what I used to call avatars of customers. And so if you're just starting out launching a brand or rebranding, or it's you're just starting out in your messaging, how do you recommend talking to these people if you don't have the data to build a profile off of? Or where do you get that data from?
So I think if you're just starting out, you probably have to rely a little bit on intuition and guesswork, because that's, you don't have any data to start with, right? But I think the sooner you can get into a situation where you kind of track behavior of users on your website, you start to ask questions from your audience, collect answers, don't lose the answers, you keep them back in a customer relationship management tool. The more vigorous you can be with that part of understanding your customer, I think that's going to help you set up the right platform to engage with them in a more one-on-one personalized manner. So yes, I mean, I think you've got to start somewhere, and the start is probably going to be a little scrappy. But a lot of things in marketing are right when you just start.
Thank you.
Rasitha, I've got a question for you about your experience at P&L. I mean, you're working with a huge brain trust there, and I think sometimes the incredibly scientific the presentation of the activities that go on at P&L are often done in our community at the sacrifice of the creative piece. What really makes it interesting, because you get into the weeds very quick, and unless you're one of these 900-pound brains, it's hard to get into the topic. How do you translate the science of P&L into a user-friendly website for the general population?
I mean, first and foremost, I mean, it's a huge team effort, right? I mean, the real storytellers, I think, for science are, people like David, Hannah, Marianne, Showalter, those are the strengths that we have in terms of storytelling. And that's, obviously I missed a lot of names, but I'm seeing some names in the chat that I think are, have been the pillars of storytelling at P&L. I think when it comes to translating that into the website, it's really, a couple of things, right? One is we have a lot of great stories that come out. So it's really having the right process to identify what the most important stories are for that particular time. And then providing the information architecture within the website to get those stories the right placements. And then really, that's one side of things, right? People who come to your website is a small portion of all the people out there on the internet. So that's where the discoverability side of things becomes really important. So you need to, it's not enough just to write stories and post stories. You have to really think about the discoverability aspect and make sure that your content is found on the internet, in the wide web, when people search for related keywords. So if someone is doing a search on nanomaterials, if you have an interesting story on nanomaterials, we should be able to get that story across to that user. So we have to make sure that our stories rank well on search engines like Google. So it's the discoverability side of things, I think, is critical, and that's a big part of what I do.
Cool. I'm going to move it over to Shondell, who's got a question for you on surveys. Go ahead, Shondell.
Yeah, I had a question on surveys. They're really popular right now. And surveys go out to revenue-based clients, but also they go out to your smaller client base that how long should they be? I feel like some of them are just like, wait, you get sucked in and then you're like, okay, I'm not finishing this.
So when you say surveys, you're talking of like market research surveys?
Yeah, well, I'm really asking more about the non-revenue type, but they ask questions like how, what more information would you like to hear, or what would you like to see, or what was your experience, or did you like something? Like, how long should a survey actually be? Is there a guideline?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, I have as a customer on the receiving end of marketing, I have never filled out a long survey from anyone. I don't think a lot of people do that unless they are incentivized to do it. Personally, I prefer, when I have a one-on-one conversation with a brand where I could, the organization is going to ask me a question, I provide the answer, and they can ask a second question, but it's not a survey, right? I think when you see like surveys with like 50 questions or something like that, that's disheartening. It probably is not going to give you the right kind of answers, or I don't think a lot of the right type of customers would be willing to fill out those forms either. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think there's a magic number to it, Shondell, but I mean, anything that takes more than 15 minutes, I don't think is going to be perceived well by a majority of people. That's I don't know. Does that make sense?
Jessica.
Another one. So I'm loving the left hand and YouTube story, because my husband is left-handed. So anytime I hear that, I'm surprised you didn't like pop in and look in the window to be like, oh, you're talking about left-handers. Do you have like a personal experience with that, where you guys were going down a process, launching something, and you had that disruptor come in and say, wait a minute, we're doing this wrong? Or do you have any personal experience like that? Just because I can't get that YouTube story out of my head.
Yeah, I mean, I had a few experiences like that. One is designing digital experiences and ignoring the accessibility side of things, right? That's sometimes we it's not some of what happens is you kind of go through that process of developing a customer experience, and you have not had that perspective. So it's really important, I think, especially if you are shipping something that is going to be used by the masses, really think through the different perspectives that you are missing out, and try to enrich your team with those perspectives. And some of it is hard, right? You got to try it, fail, and learn from it, and move on. So does that answer your question?
It does. It's nice to know we all have that. Oh, we should have thought about that. Thank you.
Totally. Yes.
Over to you, Hannah.
Yeah. Hey, Rasitha, great presentation.
Hey.
Thank you so much. I unfortunately got interrupted when we were talking about the shift from persona to, I think it was identification. And I just wanted to get more on that. And, with the government and things like that, we're limited on the amount of data we can collect. So how do you advise making that shift, or do we, from personas to identifiers? What's your advice on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know whether being a government institution limits us from the amount of data we can collect. I think it's more about being upfront about the kind of data that you collect, having those statements, having that language, and more importantly, not misusing the data. right? If you collect data and if you start selling it to someone or using it to spam your customers, that's not the right thing to do. But as long as you use the data to enrich the customer experience, and doing that in a non-creepy way, obviously, right? That's the right approach. And I think we probably haven't explored a lot of personalization on pnl.gov either, but I think there's some subtle things that we have done. For example, when someone reads a story within a particular area, we show them related stories within that area, right? Related, relevant, timely stories. So things like that, where you in a subtle way you recommend content that would also interest a particular user based on how they consumed information. So I think there's a lot of cool things we can do with personalization with any website.
Great, thanks.
But I do have a question, if that's okay.
Oh.
I have more of the communication aspect, as far as there's so many different ways, different types of content, and we're expected to do everything, from long format writing to this ad copy to now SEO has a different type of style writing. Is that part of that demographic or that diversity that you're also talking about that should be at the table?
So in terms of creating content, I think I'm absolutely. I think diversity should have a voice in that table, right? When you create content, it should work with a diverse set of audiences. But I also think one of the things that we sometimes miss with content creation is we err on one side too much, right? Sometimes we create content that's extremely journalistic, but it's not discoverable on search engines. And sometimes we go the other extreme, which is it works really well on search engines, but it's not attractive, engaging content, right? So I think it's about balance. It's about finding that sweet spot where content, it flows nicely, it's organic, tells a great story, but also it becomes discoverable and has the right technical SEO baked into it. So I think it's. I mean, are you working for what's your organization?
I work for a university, so I'm in public affairs, and I'm finding that I'm over a lot of these areas, and to find a content writer to be able to hit all those facets, it's a hit and miss. So it's kind of like you need an SEO person, but then be able to also use that content and manipulate it in different ways so you can get the most reach. But I was just wondering how you guys are doing that in your respective areas. Right.
Yeah. I mean, finding writers who can write about a particular domain, but also knowledgeable about SEO is pretty hard. It's a rare skill set. One way to approach that, that I've had some success with in the past is you get the writer to focus on the domain, and then you would have kind of like an SEO manager or SEO analyst who would be setting templates and things like that, which would keep you in good shape in terms of SEO. And obviously there needs to be collaboration between the writer and the SEO person. They need to work hand in hand, be lockstep. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting problem to navigate, and but definitely something worth putting your efforts behind.